Bradley Beal is going to be bought out. From what I've seen and from what I've heard, it's pretty much all but agreed upon. But again, that's not the point of it. That's not me trying to be like, oh, I know more than you. That's not the point of this. The point is very plainly, why are the Phoenix Suns buying out Bradley Beal? That's the only reason and the only question that should be answered on today's Ben Garcia show. And so I decided to crunch some numbers. The only reason why the Phoenix Suns would buy out Bradley Beal is because they have a corresponding move ready to make to strike. The reasoning why it doesn't make any sense to buy out Bradley Beal is because, yes, he's got $110 million still left on his deal. And that is a boatload of money for a guy that doesn't fit your team. And let's just call it what it is, has been a big flop on your team ever since he came over from the Washington Wizards. But Beal is due $53 million this year. And next year, he's going to be due $57 million. That is a total of $110 million. Here's what I would do in the Bradley Beal situation. I've seen some people say there's no point in saying this because it doesn't matter. The Suns are going to buy out Bradley Beal regardless. I want you to know where I stand on it. Buying out Bradley Beal without a corresponding move is probably the dumbest thing you could do if you're the Phoenix Suns. I don't understand hindering yourself, laying $20 million until 2030 to the side. To put that in perspective, I will be 32 years old when the Phoenix Suns are done paying off Bradley Beal. I'm currently 27. That is, hopefully, I have numerous kids by then. 2030 is a long ways away. And paying Bradley Beal that much crazy money is absolutely asinine. So they have to have a corresponding move ready. If the Phoenix Suns are moving off for Bradley Beal and don't have a corresponding move ready for Bradley Beal as soon as they let him go, it is a half-baked idea and just getting rid of a problem just to get rid of a problem that isn't necessarily hindering anything. You don't have to buy out Bradley Beal. You don't have to spread $20 million over the next 5 years just to make you feel better that he's not on the roster. You don't have to do any of that. But let's give the Suns the benefit of the doubt. Maybe there is a move being ready to be made as soon as Bradley Beal is let go by the Phoenix Suns. So let's go through a couple of them. Ultimately, the Suns would want to be dodging both the aprons, both the first and the second aprons, which would alleviate all restrictions mostly from making a deal and making things easier for the Suns to get better. But you ask yourself, are they preparing for this year or next year? And if the Suns are preparing for free agency next year, why don't you just buy out Bradley Beal next year? Why don't you just write him a $57 million check to go away next year? And then at that point, he's off the books, or you trade his expiring deal. This is another thing to me that just drives me crazy. Bradley Beal coming off of an expiring deal of $57 million next year is like a gold mine. He turns from a negative asset to at least at minimum a normal asset. Like he's not positive, he's not negative, but he shifts all the way from negative to smack dab in the middle. And you might be able to get players back for Bradley Beal through a trade that could help you win. Or you could buy him out then. But this idea to just spread it over across 4 or 5 seasons is absolutely insane. Unless there's a corresponding move ready to happen as soon as they move on from Bradley Beal. And so you ask yourself, okay, let's look at the contracts that the Phoenix Suns have right now. What are some contracts they could aggregate together to move off of one Bradley Beal? So here's one really interesting enough. Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal is the most interesting in terms of what they could get back for Bradley, or what they could send out and get back in a trade for those two players. But Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal make $27 million a year. Here are a few players that would make sense for the Phoenix Suns at $27 million a year to come and move over to the Phoenix Suns. Devin Vassell, Draymond Green, Nick Claxton, Trey Murphy, Mikal Bridges, Jaden McDaniels. That is 6 names that fit perfectly for the Phoenix Suns, each one of those guys. $27 million. You trade Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal and whatever assets you have to get one of those players. That does make sense. However, the Suns have the contracts to make those players work in a trade. Like, meaning that they have the money to send out between Royce O'Neal and Grayson Allen to go get one of those players. However, they don't have the assets necessary to attach to those players to get a Vassell, to get a Green, to get a Claxton, to get a Murphy, to get a Bridges, or a McDaniels. It's just not possible. And then you say to yourself, okay, maybe the Suns are looking at restricted free agency. There's no way they're going to be able to get Jonathan Kuminga or a player like Josh Giddey. Josh Giddey would make immense sense for this Suns team. I would trade Jalen Green for Josh Giddey because although I think Jalen Green can be a very good player in the NBA, it's not going to happen here because the fit is just atrocious between Booker and Green. Maybe there's a world where Jalen Green just needs to be a secondary scorer, and that is true. He's never had a scorer alongside him like Devin Booker. But these are the names that make sense in a deal. If you were to buy out Bradley Beal, this would be a corresponding move that would make sense by aggregating the salaries of Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal. Devin Vassell, Draymond Green, Nick Claxton, Trey Murphy, Mikal Bridges, and Jaden McDaniels all make $27 million or under. And you say to yourself, those guys are awesome, great. And then you think, you don't have the assets to go get those guys. So maybe the Suns are thinking smaller. What about Grayson Allen and Nick Richards? That's $21.875 million. Here are the guys that fit that mold. Marcus Smart, Norman Powell, who just got traded, so cross him off the list. Malik Monk, Rui Hachimura, Keldon Johnson. None of those guys are worth giving up multiple assets to bring them in. A wild card person that would make a lot of sense if you moved off from Beal and went and traded for this guy. Larry Markkinen makes a lot of sense on this Suns team. The Suns have wanted a stretch big, but let's call it what it is, guys. I love Larry Markkinen. I think he'd be awesome here. However, there's no world where the Suns have the assets to get this guy. If they don't have the assets to get Murphy or Bridges or McDaniels or Claxton, they don't have the assets to get this guy who scored 19 points a game last year, 42, 35, 88 splits. But the year before that, when he was an all-star, he shot 48% from the field. Holy cow. 40% from three and 90. He nearly shot 50, 40, 90 last season. That's the season I'd be looking at. So I'm going through all the options for when you move on from Bradley Beal. There is no corresponding move that makes sense. So if the Suns are just saving their pennies for next year, what do I care? What do I care? I'd rather keep Bradley Beal on this roster and buy him out next season, or just trade him for the expiring deal that he will be. I don't understand getting under the apron when I can't do any other moves to make it easier on myself to succeed later on. So I get people wanting to move on from Bradley Beal, but it seems like this is the growing concern. You want to move on from Bradley Beal. What's your plan? Because there is no one worth a damn who makes $27 million that you can combine the contracts of Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal to get you there, but you don't have the assets to bring those players in that are necessary to put in a deal with Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal. And I don't really want the Suns to trade Grayson Allen and Nick Richards and end up getting back a Malik Monk. That's not worth giving up assets for. So truly, I don't know what the Suns are thinking with this buyout. This 12 to 13 minute rant that I've done, I've ran through all the scenarios. It just doesn't make any sense. So if the Suns are going to buy out Beal, they should have a corresponding move ready. But whatever that move is going to be is likely not going to outweigh the negatives of having to pay Bradley Beal $20+ million a year not to be on the team. Or I guess I should say $19 million a year over the next 5 seasons to not be on the team. Yes, it opens up other avenues like being able to aggregate salaries, being able to trade your own picks, all those sorts of things. But one, the Suns don't have picks to trade, and Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal are kind of important factors to this team that you can't just give away in a deal unless you're getting someone back, but see plan A where you don't have the assets to do that. So I don't know what the Suns are thinking. Truly, I don't know what they're thinking with this Bradley Beal stuff. It doesn't really make any sense. If there's a world where they can make it happen, they can bring a corresponding move in, I'll change my opinion accordingly. But overall, what this looks like is trying to help the wallets of Matt Ishbia, and I have no interest in doing that. Just none. I understand why Matt would have interest doing it, but I don't.